take us back to the start of Jerry. How old are you now? You're 29?
26.
26 years old. 26-year-old entrepreneur. How much are you going to do this year in sales?
We'll close out this year a little over $1 million.
Over $1 million. 26-year-old business from Anchorage, Alaska. So where did the entrepreneurial bug start with you? Where did you get started?
So I would say when I was like 12 or 13, so I was having a birthday party one year, and I told all my buddies, so I figured if I could get 30 or 40 people to come, and they all brought me $5 for a gift instead of a present, I'll make a ton of money.
Okay.
So I was actually making calls. I was calling people, hey, my birthday's in May, it's coming up, we're having it at the gym, it's gonna be awesome. Instead of a present, just bring me $5, that way you don't have to shop for anything.
That's awesome. So where did you figure out how to do that though?
So I was super into basketball. I was trying to get enough for like money to get some equipment and go to a couple camps. And so my family was probably like super lower middle class, no finances for that. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna go to these, I've got to figure out how to get money. And so that was kind of my first like making a list. Like I had no idea that that's what you're supposed to do, but I was just naturally like, all right, I'm gonna make a list. I think this guy has money. I think
you just naturally were like, I need to make lists and make phone calls.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. And so how old were you? You were 10, 12?
I was probably 12.
12 years old. And then for this birthday where you were making phone calls, you were how old?
That's when I was.
Oh, that's when
12.
it was.
Yeah.
So there was nothing else, no family, nobody talked about business, nobody was into entrepreneurship. It was just, this was an innate thing that you had where you were like, okay, I want to try to figure this out. Okay. So where did it go from there? Like what were the things that took place in your life after that? Because we're only talking about 12 years difference from when that happened to where you are now.
Right. So so I did that. My dad, he was a painter, and so he would basically like contract out painting jobs. I'd help him out, and I remember one day he was telling me like, hey, the smart way to do this would be we would hire a bunch of people, and then they would do the painting, and we wouldn't have to show up. And that blew my mind. I was like, what? So first I was like why?
Your dad was a painter running a business?
My dad was a painter, yeah.
Okay.
So he was like an employee with another guy, and we would go do the jobs.
Right.
And so he was like, well, if we were the other guy, someone else would be going to do the jobs. We would still get paid, and we wouldn't have to be there. So that was like mind blowing to me. I'd never thought of that concept, and at first I was like, why would?
But you had to go get the jobs, right? So you brought them in, but
right.
then you sent it out to a contractor to do it.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So your father was successful as a painting business. You worked with him directly?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that experience where you learned all of this data, all this information.
So a lot of just like watching him. He's a super hard worker. So we would be there, like we'd stay at jobs till 2, 3 in the morning, just hustling, getting it done. And I think I was making $5 an hour. And at the age of like 10, 11, 12, 13, like that was a decent, like I didn't know another way I could go make $5 an hour. So I would, make that money, set it aside. I'd blow it on whatever. So that was something I learned later is what to do with my money after I got it. But just watching him like going out and getting the jobs, but also seeing him struggle too. So that was something I looked at and I was like, I get the idea, but I can see where like we would need to improve it if we're going to make it a business.
So you think your father really imprinted on you the idea of building a business, but more so how to go out and acquire new work as opposed to being the one doing the work?
Right.
Yeah. See, I didn't have that when I was growing up. My dad was the worker. Like he was a one-man show. He'd go to work from 9 to 6, and then he would do contracting jobs himself. And that's how he made extra money. But he never built like a business where it was multifaceted. He was the one doing the work all the time. And I helped him, and I helped him develop this, but I was never taught growing up the idea of what you just talked about. Like, oh, let's create a business and have a team of people that can help us move in the direction of creating a company so that I don't have to show up. I just close the deals and then I send the guys out. How do you think that first impact is on someone that's coming up and learning like that parental figure? What do you think that did for you?
I think that was big. So my parents were divorced growing up. So
Okay.
like I had like my mom's house most of the time I was there. And she did a really good job. I go to my dad's house on weekends. So like when we go to my dad's house, I was always excited. Like, what are we going to do this weekend? What kind of jobs are out
So
there?
you were creating.
Right. We're making money, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stack that up every other weekend. So that was a big imprint. And I also like the work ethic too. So just like painting, like there's nothing glamorous about it. We're painting up in Alaska. So
you get all like dots all over you,
Yeah.
your face, you don't even know. And it's, I've done that. I've managed apartments and done that thing. It's a very interesting, not pretty.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a big imprint, but seeing like the consistency, and then also seeing like he knew how to get work when he wanted it.
Right.
So like we never had a ton of money, but like when my dad had to pay bills, like somehow he always had a job. Like there was always something. And so I saw like as a kid, I kind of questioned like, what if you always did that? And that's like later on in life where 10X came in. That's kind of the concept of like, what if you always hustled like you needed the paycheck?
Okay.
Because he knew how to.
He knew how. Okay, so you saw that. So what happened after you went to college school? Where did you go?
Didn't go to college. I went to Houston High School.
Okay. So no college degree.
No college degree at all.
Me neither.
Yeah.
I dropped out.
I was 13. I told my mom, I was like, I'm never going to college.
Smart.
Yeah.
I should have never gone. I mean, I went and dropped 60 grand on loans to go for 2 years, and then I stopped.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to pursue the film industry, and that's all I was interested in. I was like, nobody's teaching me what I want to do. And in my head, I thought to myself, it's more important to go out, build the work, build the reputation, than to get a degree.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's huge, and it sounds like you knew what you were engaged and interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew from an early age I wasn't interested in school because I was doing school. I was a straight A student till about 10th grade, and then I realized that was the game. Like I would pass one class and they'd have another one. I'd pass that, there was going to be another one. So at probably around the age of like 15 or 16,
you
I was
figured
just
out.
like, I'm not interested in this. A C is what I need to get, so that's what I'm going to go get. I'm going to spend my time on things I'm interested in.
So what captured your attention then? What was the thing where you were like, I need to, that shift? What did you start doing at 15, 16?
I started bodybuilding.
Really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I spent probably 3 hours every single day after school, and then I had 2 weight training classes during school too, and I was just in the gym every single day. So that had my attention, my time, my interest.
I wish I
started
would have done
competing.
that. I actually had to take CrossFit lessons to figure out how to weight train. Once I figured out like the mechanics of it, then I just started doing it myself.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So then what happened? So you did 2 years of high school, or you have your high school diploma?
I have my diploma.
At least
yeah.
you have that. Okay, I have mine too.
Yeah.
So what happened? You graduated high school. What was that step?
So I graduated.
You're still in Alaska right now, right?
Still in Alaska, yeah.
Yeah.
So I graduated in, I think it was 2011. And basically, like, because I was doing bodybuilding, my thought was like, all right, I'm going to become a personal trainer. I'm going to go professional at bodybuilding, and I'm going to go open a gym. And I had that figured out. And then I literally, like, I was working on it before I graduated. So I had a job offer. The day I graduated, I walked off stage, went to the gym, and trained my first client.
Okay.
It was just
for weight training. So you started a weight training business.
right. So I was an employee at a gym.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long were you with this particular job, and what did you learn there?
I was there for about a year and a half, and what I learned there was, like, I guess, like, growing up, like, I had like the innate desire for improvement. That's what attracted me to bodybuilding, because I could see, like, if I lifted
see
weights,
results.
Exactly. So I realized, like, not everyone's like that. So I went to the gym, and, like, you know, one of the first things I noticed was there was overweight personal trainers, and I was just like, what?
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they didn't work out. Like, they weren't pushing. The money was there. Like, I think you could make $30 an hour. That was big money to me at the time.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, so if I do this many sessions per week, you're telling me I can make this much. So that's what I did. I pushed. And so I would literally do 12, 15 sessions a day and just bang them out.
Wow.
So
at $30 per session.
$30 per session.
So you were making, what were you making per week with that?
I was probably doing like $2,000 to $3,000 a week.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty
and
good.
I had no idea what to do with this. I was just blowing it. Got a car, like spending it on supplements, whatever else I could.
Yeah.
And I got promoted up within the first 3 months to the head trainer of the gym. So I was, get this, 18, just graduated 90 days ago.
Right.
And I'm the head personal trainer there, running it. And I didn't realize that was a sales role.
Huh.
So I had not yet been introduced to sales. So
Okay.
I was like, man, I'm a personal trainer, but they want me selling stuff. Like, how does
But
this
you didn't
work?
know you didn't know what was going on. So how
Right.
long were you with them?
I was with them for about a year and a half.
Then what happened?
So I transitioned out of that into financial services.
Wow, that's really
Super big.
obnoxious.
Yeah, super big jump.
Why financial services?
So I had a guy that was kind of prospecting me for it. He was in a financial services MLM at the time. And so he's like, man, you need to check this out. And I had no interest in money. So like at the age of 17, I forget exactly who told me that money wasn't backed by anything. And so that was a moment for me. I can remember driving up this road called Kinnick in Wasilla, where I grew up, and having a thought like, if it's not backed by anything, it's monopoly money. Why would I work for it? So I made the conscious decision, like at that moment, like I just wasn't going to care about it.
Okay.
And so that's why I would earn it, but I would just blow it because I had no purpose. I didn't understand what I could do with it, and then I could leverage that. So I sold a giant package. It was like 36 sessions. It was like $3,000, and that was the biggest one I've ever closed at the gym. And so my commission on it, I'm like waiting for the check, right? $30. And I was like, damn, $30. That's a lot of work. And so I texted my buddy that was telling me about financial services. I said, if I sold a thing over there that was worth $3,600, what would I make? And he's like, well, you'd make half. So I was like, that's $1,700. He's like, yeah. He's like, you'd make about $1,700. And so I went to the meeting, showed up, watched it, and that's where I really like saw the need that's out there for financial literacy. A lot of people are struggling with things similar to fitness, things that the information's out there and available, it's just not getting out to them.
Got it.
So that's kind of where I made that jump. And
Okay.
it was pretty instantaneous. I'm a go-getter, so like when I see something and get interested in it, there's no time. I just go right into it. So that's what I did there.
So financial services running through. Now you have a company called Wealth DynamX. And how long were you with this MLM before you decided to go on your own?
I was there for about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very, heavy on recruiting, and I got that. Like, I understood, like, I need to have distribution, and that's one thing I'm thankful for is I understand, like, you've got to have
People.
systems and people.
Yes.
You can't do the solo entrepreneur thing.
No.
So I understood that really early on, but the thinking wasn't big enough. So the top guy in my office was making $50K a year, and he was celebrated. And I was kind of like, but that I get it, but that doesn't seem like a lot of money. I was doing that at the gym. And so I stayed there as long as I could, and then I was independent. I looked at how could I open my own firm up and basically just run it the way I know I need to run it. So I did that after about 2 years. Actually got endorsed by Dave Ramsey in 5 different states. And at that time, the company was called AG Capital Group. So we were running AG Capital Group. We had a bunch of different agents across the country. And that was something that we dove into pretty fast as well. It's just, all right, we figured out we need to go independent. My wife and I were running it together. And so we started setting up those same distribution points, like in different states, different cities, and then looking at how could we acquire territories with Dave Ramsey. And so we were at the time living in Alaska, and my first territory with Dave was in St. Cloud, Minnesota. So I was commuting every 2 weeks from Alaska to Minnesota. I'd hop on a plane, go down there, close deals, come home. So this was probably February. It was the last time I did the commute. We had $2,400 saved for the trip in the bank. And my wife's car breaks, guess how much it cost?
How much?
$2,400.
Wow.
So I was thinking of, like, I had the trip booked, I had business in the pipeline, I had clients down there, and I couldn't not show up. So I put it all on a credit card. I had enough for a one-way ticket, 4 days with a hotel room and a rental car. And there's no money in the bank, and it was basically like I needed to go down there and close deals, or I wasn't going to come home. And so I went down, and I was staying in the crappiest hotel out there, driving my rental car around. It was St. Cloud, it's very rural. So I was going through different like farm communities and driving a lot to appointments, and I wasn't closing anything. It came down to day 3 of 4. The rental car was about to expire. The hotel room, I had one more night, and it's February in Minnesota, and legitimately no plane ticket home, no money, no credit. Like I didn't know what I was going to do. The option was pretty much like homeless in February in Minnesota. I had budget rental car calling me because my rental had expired at that point, and they're like, hey, like this is called theft. We're gonna send security out if you don't bring the car back.
Right.
And so I kept it that night to the next day, and the next day I closed a deal, and I made about $2,000, and that's something that I got got the commission advanced to me, got my plane ticket, got home, and I just remember thinking like I will never be in this position again.
Yeah.
Like I'll never put myself at that risk with my wife up there, with my business, with my clients. It'll just never happen. So that was like my first real like sales matters. Sales and income is important. And I was a financial planner, and I didn't know sales matters. I didn't know income was important. So I did that, and we were still endorsed by Dave. I hadn't dove into like the money mindset. So I was just teaching people like pay off your car, get out of debt, get 6 months in the bank, stick everything into a 401k and pay your house off.
Yeah.
That was the plan. And after I started like doing that and getting successful, we moved down to Minnesota. And so we had literally moved down, didn't know anybody. I had 4 or 5 clients, a list, and a 100 square foot office. And I read a book around the similar time called Creature from Jekyll Island. Right after that, the movie The Big Short came out. And so I got all of this data that basically just said like what I was doing was incorrect. What I was doing was not helping people. And that was crazy. I remember when I finished, like that was within a 2-week period. I hit that info from Grant. I got that info from Creature from Jekyll Island, and that movie came out. And I just remember like sitting there in like complete apathy. Like what do I do? Like everything I've built like is not ethical in my mind anymore. Like I can't keep doing it.
Wow.
So that was like when we first started rebranding. It was first that like we actually gave that entire business away to a colleague, and we're just like I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I can't do that. That's not something I can get behind anymore.
Okay.
So that was when we first like turned the corner, and now we focus strictly on real estate. So we focus on real estate. We set up the sacred account for people to put 40% of their income into, And that's our business model now. And that was really the rebrand, is realizing like wealth, first of all, means every area of an individual's life. It doesn't just mean I've got money so I can retire at 60. So my mom died at 60. So part of my story is I saw that whole thing not work. Like, you know, the whole like put everything away, wait for it to happen, and then it just didn't.
Right.
So that, to me, I call it the deferment theory, where you put off life till you're 60 when you could be like learning, working, playing, doing all of that, creating today, rather than deferring it till age 60. And that's how people should live. The reason they don't is they're just not educated. They don't have the information.
They don't have the data.
Right. Like, how do you make money today? Like, if I want to go on a vacation, why would I wait till I'm 60 when I could go make 10 grand next week? The question is, do I know how to make the 10 grand?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of financial literacy and income, that came to me when I started working with Grant. I didn't know anything about sales or business or any of that stuff, because I was always like, I'm working hard, because I was the worker, right? So my mentality was, and my dad's mentality was, just work harder, do more, work harder, do more. But he wasn't making, he was good. He was making like $250 a year. But, you know, we never had money. We had a nice house. We had 2 nice cars. We had a swimming pool. We would go on vacations, but we were doing better. But there wasn't like that. And that's when I dove in deep, kind of like what you were saying. I made a conscious decision because I started investing in my own personal development, and I would go broke. Like, the only reason why I have not invested in any type of real estate or anything is because I throw all my money into my own self.
Yeah.
Because every time I've done that, I have been able to get that money back times 10, and then I just reinvest it back in. So what I've been doing is been banking on my abilities to understand the sales process and understand how to communicate with people, and then I reinvest it back into me, and then I make it all back and then more. And what I found is that by taking care of that and educating myself and getting the right data about money and income and spending and all that, it just came together where I didn't have to struggle. I wasn't, oh my God, I'm only making $3 grand a month, or I have to live in a $1,200 a month apartment. Like, that frustrated me. I was like, that's not me.
Right.
That is not where I'm supposed to live. I'm supposed to be in a multi-million-dollar apartment, driving a sports car, and never worrying about money. And I mean, I basically created that. Now I'm like, okay, how do we go bigger? And the lack of data, like you said, is one of the things that's just excruciatingly painful, because it creates this stuck, you're like in a box.
Right.
And you know, but you don't know. And I started hitting the phones. I was here. I just started making phone calls. After work, I'd go home, I'd get a list of people, and I would call people every day. I didn't know what I was doing.
Did anyone have to tell you to do that, or you just?
I just did it.
Yeah.
I just was like, I got so sick and tired of having no money. I got sick and tired of just feeling like worthless. And I wanted to contribute. I wanted to be important. I wanted to hold the position of authority. And so for the next, I would say, I don't know, that was probably 4 years ago, I started to cultivate an image, an identity, and a brand. And, you know, that'd be a question for you, is the idea of what are you willing to sacrifice and give up? Like, I mean, I gave up my own passion and something that I absolutely love and still do to this day. I just wanted to survive better, which is more important, because then I can play with whatever I want to play with. How important do you think that conscious decision is, that moment where you're like, this will never happen to me again?
That's huge. Like, so when I coach people on wealth, like, we try our very best to like take someone where they're at and make them interested. So we'll walk through like our planning process. Like, we don't even start with money. We start with purpose. Like, what are you about? So our question to all of our clients is, if you were in a position where you could treat money like oxygen, like you don't think about how much breath is there. You just do it. Whatever you need to do, the money's there. Like, what would you do with your time? What would you do with your life? Who
It's a great question. Great question to ask.
So people have like these goals and stuff, but like they
can't do anything.
They can't do it. Yeah. So it's either like we either take them, like, let's say they're in the middle. We're either going to take them in the middle, and our goal is like we're going to give them the information, and we're hoping that they'll just go straight up with it. But what usually happens is they get the information, and then they settle, because they look at, I've either got to sacrifice what I have, or I've got to, you know, make sense of where I'm at, and they usually actually have to go down to a point where they're just pissed. Like, you know, mom dies, they lose their job, like something happens, their 401k gets cut in half. And until that happens, a lot of times, like, if people don't have that moment, they never get shook up enough to realize, I need to go big.
I mean, I was completely homeless, man. I was living in, I was stuck.
Too, dude.
I was stuck in another country. I couldn't even get back. I couldn't come home. And that's where my decision happened. And that's when I said, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to pull myself out of this. And what I've noticed is, and that's an interesting point about bringing them up and down, is that even when I started to make more money, I would consciously go out and buy something that was, I wouldn't say it would put me in jeopardy, but it would force me to have to produce.
Exactly.
It would force me, like I bought a car, it was stupid. I know it was stupid. Everybody knows it's stupid, whatever. But what it did was I used it for branding, and that car is landing me one of the biggest accounts this company's ever going to see. However, it also forced me to produce more income, to sustain, and then go higher. Because like you said, I either make sense, okay, I could just get by and have this, or I could do this, have this, and have everything else I wanted. And I made the choice to continue to move forward up, because if I didn't have these little milestones where I forced myself to spend more and then force myself to save like that 40%, if not more than that, I wouldn't advance. I wouldn't feel like I was moving forward. And I don't know if that's financially literate, but it puts me in a position where I have to do something.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down. I don't want to go backwards.
Yeah.
And I don't want to stay where I am. So I take these incremental moves that are kind of significant that allow me to push myself forward. But that moment where you're like, I've had enough, I think every person that's ever made it to some level of financial success experiences this moment where they're just like, I'm done.
Right. Well, and I think like the thing most people don't realize, it's about quitting. So like when somebody is making sense of like, you were homeless, I was homeless, like at some point we made sense of decisions that led us there.
Yeah.
Right. So we had goals. Like I remember as a kid, my goal was never to be homeless with my wife the first year of our marriage. Like that was not on the table as like, this is the goal.
Yeah.
So like, but at some point, like there was a goal that I had that I quit on, and in basically to justify it, I made sense of doing what I was doing, and it led me where I went. So somebody's already doing that. They're already making a conscious decision to sacrifice things, and it's about what is that decision.
Right.
So we're talking about like sacrifice, not even like live below your means, because I hate that. We're talking about like sacrifice comfort, sacrifice mediocrity. And so people will look at that and be like, well, I don't want to sacrifice. And my response back is that, yeah, but what are you already sacrificing? What could you be
stuck.
doing? You're stuck, yeah. And like that went right over my head instantly. And then I reached back and grabbed it, and I was like, wait, there's something there. And I looked into that question, and that's why I really looked at like, what am I capable of? What could I be doing? And that's where like I made, that decision like you're talking about. And when you do that, like, so in Alaska, we've got this animal called a wolverine. Like people have seen like the Wolverine movie and stuff, like a wolverine legit, like this big badger.
Yeah.
And,
They're small.
They're little, but
they're vicious.
They're freaking vicious.
They're super vicious.
So we would go camping with my dad, and I remember the advice he would always give me: if a bear comes, never run, and never corner a wolverine.
Yeah.
Like those are like two like awesome pieces of advice from a dad, but like never run from a bear, and then never corner a wolverine.
Yeah.
And like as I started looking at what you just explained, like almost like cornering yourself, knowing that if I don't get cornered, I don't fight.
That's it.
If I'm comfortable.
You have to. And I remember when I was going through a moment, I had a guy who was helping me. I was really struggling with that. I was really upset because I'm like, I can't believe my life came to this. And he said to me something that was, stuck with me. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He's like, you only have one thing to do. And the only thing you have to do is to be successful. That's it. Like, there is no other option. You're either going to die or you're going to be successful. What direction do you want to go? And that, when he said that to me, I realized, oh, wow, this is quite painful, but he's absolutely right. What do I want to do? I could stay right here in this moment and wallow and be apathetic and be in despair and cry and be in grief, or I could just say, well, I got to climb out one step at a time. So how are you helping people today? I mean, you kind of touched on that a little bit, but what are you doing today that's really, offering advice and it's financial and everything that you have with Wealth DynamX? How does that work?
Yeah, so like when we first started the company, we started with investments, right? So we basically got out of the Wall Street business, and so we started looking at real estate deals. Like, how can we get clients into not like owning a single family home,
but getting them
get them into big real estate deals?
Right. Okay.
Because the idea is like, if you're really gonna live a life on purpose, you can't trade time for money.
Right.
You've got to trade time for experience, for creation, all the things that really matter.
Right.
The money does still need to be there though. So the real estate, the idea was like, we get you in the real estate, it pays you every month. You're now no longer making that exchange of time for money, and you're free. So we were doing that, right? And then we realized like, all right, this is great, but people don't have the money to get into these deals. I was saving 40% of my income. I was like, well, how come I'm not having my clients do this? So we established a sacred account. We've set it up for them where they save 40% of their income, and they start, stacking up, 50K, 100K, 200K. They can go do these deals. And so we started doing that, and I realized, well, there's another problem ahead of that is like most of the people I talk to, they don't make enough money in the first place to save that 40%. And so that was like a real conundrum. We're like, well, how do we help them do that? So when we work with clients, we're like, all right, we gotta get you making more money today. Then we set up their sacred account so they're saving 40% of their income, and then we're getting them into these real estate investments.
Okay.
So our clients get an app where it shows them their financial statement. It runs through all of the top 1% financial ratios. How much of your income is being saved? What's your debt to asset ratio? What's your passive income ratio? All these numbers that are important. And then we project out, like, what do you need in cash flow? What do you need to do with your debt? What do you need to be doing with your real estate goals? And then we line out an action plan that starts at the top of, like, what's your purpose? And then we dial it down into, like, daily. If you're a sales guy, what are you doing every day to make that 10-year goal happen? Or if you own a business, what's your production like? Or let's say you're an employee at a job and you're earning a good income. That's awesome, but how do you take this to the next level so that you don't have to wait 40 years to be free?
Right.
So we walk people through that plan, get them working every day on how do I get my thinking and my knowledge big enough to make the income happen. We've given them the place to put it, and then we stick it into real estate once we've done that as well. And then we just repeat that cycle over and over and over.
People don't get the correct information when it comes to creating wealth or creating a life of freedom. They, like what I had, I grew up with a father who didn't know how to get more people on the team, and he was doing all the work. And I kind of went through that here a little bit when I was expanding the business. I was by myself, making the sales, delivering all the content, and then I was like, I want to scale this, I need more people. So we made that happen. And I think one of the most impressive things that you've done is you've given people an opportunity to find a way out and shown them the right information that exists out there. And if they wanted to get that information, they would go to get your book. What you guys need to do is you need to link yourself up with Jerry. And I'm not saying that as a cliche way, I'm just saying that as an example of what is possible and what can be achieved when you have the correct information and you have a burning desire, or you have an interest, or you have a direction that you want to go. People like Jerry can give you the training and the information and the financial literacy to pull yourself out completely from any issues or problems that you currently have. And the problem that most people face is that they get stuck and they don't want to make the sacrifice. The sacrifice, that moment when you have to say, I gotta just stop doing what I'm doing, I gotta stop going out, I have to stop acting like a victim, and I just have to go get the correct information so that I can move out into the space and make more money. People like Jerry here are gonna help you do that.